Today's guest is someone who truly lives at the front lines of data innovation. Boris Bialek is the global Field CTO and VP Industries at MongoDB. He helps some of the world's most regulated companies, so insurance giants, banks, manufacturers, to turn their messy, scattered data landscape into a real business outcome with AI. And everybody is talking about AI. But what I thought was really interesting is with over 35 years of experience, Boris still goes and sees first the AI business case and then how to apply it from a technical point of view. Welcome, Boris. Thanks that you find time for TEQ Shift Podcast. And just the first question, what do you think is today the most or the biggest problem of companies trying to do their first steps in AI?
By the way, Mark, thanks for having me. Really appreciating to be here. The interesting part is how companies start AI right now. And I don't try to be fluffy and funny about that, but I hear these stories a lot. Oh, the board decided we have an AI strategy. So what we do now? And that's where the people start from. And then there starts a wild experimentation phase. And often the approach is in every IT project should be, what is the problem we try to solve? Why are we doing it? And then should come the how and what. And for AI, I see many people starting out with discussions with me like, yeah, what is the right solution? Pinecone quadrant, why should I use MongoDB vector search? I said, what do you try to do? And that is totally throwing the people off. And that is pretty much for me the fun part right now. And just to be clear, I don't do 35 years AI. I started in those days actually with fuzzy logic. But we don't want to date ourselves, do we? Start out with one thing, start with the business. And don't start out with selecting technologies.
Hey, but still, when you look into the first companies, what they have, and you look at the data, it's usually a chaos. Isn't it that you have to start with cleaning up before you think about the business model? What do you recommend to do?
That is actually the part what my punchline is. If you don't clean up your data, don't start with AI. That said, it's somewhere going hand in hand. We see a lot of legacy applications running around, or legacy landscapes. It's not a single app what we're talking about. And a very good example is Lombard Odier. We worked with them for the last years, updating parts of their platforms. And we realized that parts which were holding them back were actually legacy systems. And this does not mean necessarily that every legacy database by default is bad designed. When I started out building my first mainframe systems, who would have assumed that at one point you have a document model? Who would assume that the data speeds and feeds are so much higher? And it's very easy to go down a rat hole at that point and start discussing, but I get so many milliseconds access time per table. That doesn't matter. What is a business layer access? How do I get to my data? If I need to go to 5,000 tables and try to figuring out how to get data out of that one in real time, I'm lost. And then the other fraction is the world which comes from purely the machine learning data warehousing side. I see a lot of AI projects starting out with, we've done this all along. It's BI. We have our whatever, choose your poison, business objects, Cognos, Tableau on top. And then I say, 1 second, what are you trying to do? Do you try to do backward looking activity or real-time activity? And then they get very confused that AI can be real-time because for them, AI is nothing else than the next step of machine learning. And that is obviously wrong either. This is all coming on the technical data level. Start thinking, clean up the house, clean up the floors, and then start building up a new table. Don't build the table first and then wonder why under the table everything is looking like the cat racket.
Just before we started the podcast, we also talked about like many companies are building AI use cases, but never get to the point that they deliver value. And when I hear you right, this is exactly what you're saying.
Sometimes when the typical example, what I'm stumbling with right now is people say, we want to have a chatbot. Chatbot is easy. We played it out. We have the summary tool and you get really excited names and the voice goes up and then say, okay, fine. Now the user is actively using it. How real time is the answer? The answer time is about 15 seconds. And I said, well, when I went to school, 2 seconds was okay. Today, people expect 50 millisecond response time of their cell phone, maybe 15-second wait time to just get to the first prompt. You can do this on the first question, like waiting for the agent. but afterwards not anymore. You have to have an interaction. When you talk to a machine, you want to have the same response speed from a human being. So, and that completely confuses people. And then we start discussing how to clean up the data, lifting data and ODSs, making data available. And this can be an airline, a retailer, or a bank. And then as soon as you mention the B word, bank, what is the biggest point? Oh yeah, we load all these highly confidential PII over an open channel where nobody really, 1 second. At that point, you start to get really, really excited into the business discussions. And without cleaning up the data, you will never get to an interactive system. Very simple.
You already mentioned a lot of steps. Hey, but I also know that you built a framework to approach those kind of use cases, or let's say business cases. But the question is a bit, it's not applicable for just one size fits all. It always will be adapted. Could you point out the steps which are needed for that?
Yes, absolutely. We call it MAAP, the MongoDB AI Application Program. When we take a look what we're doing, you start with the analysis. We have over 25 partners in the program for different purposes. And as you point out, it's not one fits all. When somebody tells me, I can use vendor X and vendor X because we standardized on this for some other purposes, and now this is the ultimate answer, then I feel like, cool. So you take a tractor to drive on the highway. Great idea. On the other side, driving a Porsche on the field is not good either. So that I like this horses for courses, the right racetrack for the right animal, and starting from the business discussion, what we try to achieve. A very good example for me is actually Novo Nordisk. We worked with them on something called Novo Scribe, which started out on a discussion. They tried for 10 years to optimize writing clinical study reports. When you write those reports, you can take a medical writer, which is normally a doctor, for very expensive money for 12 weeks. They tried to optimize it for 10 years and it failed, from 2013 to 2023. The result was it went from 12 weeks to 15 weeks. Congratulations. Now, we went down to 10 minutes now. That is business value, because suddenly you have not a doctor writing 15 weeks standard material, which is repetitive. You can utilize the person for something way more intellectual. And you do this effort once, you use AI, and the discussion was, what is a business purpose? And then we built a solution with LangChain on top and AWS Bedrock and all these funny tools, loading MongoDB's vector search functions, have the segments of the text prepared, all of these funny things. And suddenly there was business value. And that took off like light year. And they went from 43 people down to 3. And by the way, it's not that suddenly 40 doctors get unemployed. These people are rare resources. They were very happy to do something else and writing the clinical study reports.
Hey, I like these two business cases you pointed out, like Novo Nordisk and Lombardodier. But still, for me, it sounds like, okay, you solved one business case and you had immense operational efficiency case. But where is it leading to? Is there an end game you see? Like, what's the real end game for those kind of companies?
I heard from someone a very funny comparison. It says, we're in the year 1996 of the internet. We're at 300 baud dial-up right now. That's what we're talking about. When we think about what are the solutions for people looking into most of the time, it's chatbots, summary tools. A lot of people mention retrieval augmented generation, rack architectures is en vogue. Now we're moving to agentic. We're not even at the time of Yahoo and MSN Network. We're at the time when the TCP IP addresses first were distributed. That's where we are today. And give it maybe probably 12, 18 more months, and we see moving up into the, let's say, .com bubble days. We see the first real applications, the Amazon bookstore opening up. So, and I see the first AI application going that route. When you look at the progression, what you can do right now with medical research, we have a really cool company called Central Reach, where we help detect autism differently. So this is suddenly, wow. And you look in this, so what is the business value in this? And the people look at you like, you don't understand. We're helping children to have a better life. So we're working with cancer research in Paris on identifying better analysis of blood pictures and cell structures. And so this is still the year 2000. If you ask me, Boris, where are we in 5 years? Honestly, I don't dare to say it. And I'm very, maybe too conservative on this one, or too jaded in my whole own background. But I would have not assumed in 2000 to see Steve Jobs coming out with the iPhone. I was a BlackBerry user. So, and right now we are 300 baud dial-up. But the key thing is your technologies will change, but your data will not change. And if your data fundament is not solid, everything what you built on top is built on quicksand. When you think about how often will you change probably right now your embedded models? Every 6 months, 12 months, because they're so fast progressing. But if your data need to be redone every single time, the abstraction layers, you're toast.
When I look back, when I got to learn MongoDB, it stores data in a flexible document format like JSON. And it always meant for me like you store the different data types, but it's also easier to change or grow your application. And I know that developers love it. But now the question which comes up is like AI needs a lot of messy data and let's say PDFs, emails, logs, customer records, and how to make it easier or flexible to access, to store. Can you explain now the new things about MongoDB? I mean, I mentioned vector search, Gen AI integrations. What is new and how do we apply it?
This is a very good question, Mark. The key part is the first starting point is the JSON model, or what we have Bison, the binary JSON model, what we have, allows you to embed any unstructured data inside of the system. We do this already with taking pictures in real time. In Belgium, all traffic tickets get distributed via MongoDB, so that's a nice one. But so we load these pictures into the system, and we can easily deal with that. Text, voice, video data, all of the above can be stored in there. Then the vector data is on top of it as well. But the key part is we can adjust to what you need to do. It's most people start out with very simple models and start with maybe 20 elements, 30 elements, and ending up at the end with larger solutions of hundreds of elements in a single document. And that is where the excitement is. We don't know really what all needs to be integrated. A super cool example for me is NCogCloud.ai. That's a company which comes out of a background with Finet and Documento. And you say, oh my God, yes, oh my God, these solutions are around. And why are these data so important? Imagine you're a bank, you have million statements, you have client reports, all of that stuff. It's sitting in a legacy compliance archive, untouchable pretty much. You can't really work with it. Now imagine somebody lifts this into the world of AI for you, and you can get information models generated for your institute, your financial institution out of this. The same with insurance. When you think about insurance case management, like settlements and the usual claims management, imagine we lift all of these billions of cases. All of that stuff is only possible because of JSON documents. You take stuff out of these documents, you extract the actual content, the knowledge with using AI. That's new. But you still store the documents somewhere, put them on an S3 bucket or sheet, but you suddenly have active data sets versus dump archives. And by the way, you save about what I heard from some clients, over 50% of the cost. Very exciting. And those are the things which really change the needle for me.
When you reflect on this AI transformation, I mean, you did a lot of changes. You were like really part of this journey. But what could you advise to our listeners? I mean, what are you most proud of that did work in this transformation? And would you recommend that others also pay more
The
attention to
most
it?
important part is don't get scared by the business questions. If you answer the business questions, this will lead very quickly to data sources. You will be surprised. And only then you can discuss, do I want to use whichever embedder do I use? Is Hugging Face really the source where I get my data from, or do I get it somewhere else? That's actually secondary. This is like you're building the house. Do you really care who produce your roof tiles? Maybe, but the roof tile at the end is a roof tile. But the important part is if the architect is not really good, maybe the kitchen is ending up in the bathroom and that looks really, really crappy. So to avoid those kind of moments, think about that one. And I always tell people, ask why. Why are we doing this? Does this make sense? What's the business driver for this? And then you come very quickly to data. Then think about what you do with the data. And then you can say, okay, but maybe I need to have a roof structure which allows me to retiling, and I later need solar. Typical question, Switzerland, right? And in those cases, in those examples, you see very quickly people say, oh, right, I may need to switch the embedder. Oh, I may need to. And then the next part is, what are the frameworks I use? Are the frameworks flexible enough? I see a lot of people start hard coding things and ask them, you would never hard code this one in a Java application. Why do it in AI? Oh, yeah, I don't have the time to really think about it. Think about how do you bring applications to production? How do you run your CI/CD for these kind of environments? And when you start those rather unsophisticated questions, boring questions, you get very fast to the process of how do I deploy apps? And that's what we're doing with when you look at the MAAP program, you look at the different pieces, you look at what are the workflows, what are the embedders, what are the pieces, but you never say you have to choose ABC and we know which is best for you. That would be the worst option what we can give from the MongoDB side.
And the other way around, what is the most dangerous thing you could do that people shouldn't? Maybe is also unique and they didn't really expect it. Is there anything you learned?
The worst case is underestimating the intellectual incapabilities of LLMs. So, and I mean this in a very negative, positive form. If you do things smart and you ask smart questions, you get very smart output. But if you enable a system to allow people to do very unintelligent question, you may get very unintelligent garbage out, and you try to avoid this at all costs. QA is not an option. So, for example, for MongoDB, we have an internal use case, so eat our own pizza. And when you take a look, so our best example is our own doc system. We have millions of docs, what we provide to our developer community architects and the various functions. And you need to make sure that the summaries of those which are generated by the LLMs make actually sense. So we start testing the LLMs and we give them active feedback. And the result is that we're actually teaching the LLMs how to understand our documents. And this is quite interesting. And this is a QA process, classical QA, not to be underestimated. Only because you get a query output and you can demo to your boss doesn't make a good solution. It's always the things I tell people, it's the skills we learned mechanically in our life. How do I do QA? How do I do planning? How do I do architecture? How do I bring frameworks? How do I do process? These things are applicable. And the fun part is they're applicable to JSON documents as much as to designing RDBMSs as well as to AI applications. It goes really down to this fundament. And I got actually challenged by somebody really, really funny about that one by a very large international consultancy. He says, Boris, you're just old. You don't understand. This is a new world and we don't need this anymore. The LLMs take care. And I said, yeah, I had the same discussion in 2000. It was called New Eco, the new economy. And the old data formats don't measure anymore.
I'm going to summarize what I heard. And please, in the end, go and give me the key takeaway as a take-home message for our listeners. What I listen to is when you go for AI, then really think about the goal, which is about the real business value, a real business case. It's not about the technical decision. Start with that one, not with the technology one. Data chaos is real. It's always scattered. There is legacy data, so it's the number one blocker for the whole efficiency. Then there is options to go for structured, unstructured data. Vector search was one of the topics. RAG was one of the topics. And so this is a possibility to even go fast in regulated industries. Modernization is possible, but what would you add when people also trying this framework to start and get the things starting not only with a use case, but with something real business value? What else would you recommend as a take-home message?
The most exciting project I've seen is we worked with a retailer and he had a traveling salesman project about t-shirts. You have to have the right product at the right store at the right time and so on. This is, we call this a traveling t-shirt. And sometimes these things travel thousands of kilometers around Europe. You will be surprised. And to avoid that one, we built a very simple AI application which looked at every single item. And we were told, no, you can't do that. You can't look at single items. You have to look at the bigger picture, the truckload. And they said, no, let's analyze every single item. And the result was we were able actually to analyze over 10 million pieces of garment per hour. 10 million pieces of garment is a lot. And per hour. And this runs 24/7. So, and the result was we reduced 600 million in cost per year. The runtime of the project at the end of building the AI-based solution was 2 weeks. The discussion, what is the underlying problem, was 6 months. And some people got really annoyed with us. But the real answer for everything was to get all the t-shirts, which were sitting in the very large ERP systems, into very simple JSON data, which we could augment with additional information. What truck was it on? What truck did it came from? What truck is next? Which store is it planned for? These were all information which were way distributed between the supply chain module, the production planning module. You can figure it out. And we brought it all into one picture. And each t-shirt had suddenly its own life. And I simplified, it's a little bit more than t-shirts. It was quite complex. And when you take a look to this one, 600 million, that's not chop change. That's literally savings. And when you look at these kind of solutions, that's what's exciting. And at the beginning, they started with, yeah, if we can optimize something, I'm happy. And we said, what is the problem? We went always back to this basic question. And that's why I love so much AI right now. You can really do big things, from organizing t-shirts to optimizing banking processes, and really change it. That's the exciting part of IT today.
Perfect. Hey, Boris, thank you very much. Global Field CTO at MongoDB. If people want to reach out to you, how do they find you? Because I heard that you also wrote a nice book about these AI use cases and how to apply. How do they find you?
Yeah, so there's the easiest way is maybe start just Googling MongoDB AI transformation and you find a 200 pages book with all the use cases. The other thing, obviously, Boris Bialek at LinkedIn. There are not so many with my name, lucky as me. And that's the best way normally to catch me because I'm traveling like crazy and I love it.
I can confirm that. Perfect. Boris, thank you very much for being here.
Pleasure. Thank you.